Welcome to the 11th Our Lives, Our Stories African American Women's Health Conference. This year's theme is Fresh Start, New Beginnings. 11 is a number of transition, and no matter what's going on, we know that life is going to be, it's already quite a bit different than it has been. I have to confess that we struggled about doing this in person, but let me assure you that absolutely every precaution has been taken to ensure your health. You had temperature checks, we asked you to self-certify, we'll ask you to do as you're doing, sit with your bubble. We have lots of opportunities for you to go outside when you need a break from the mask, but we do ask that as long as you're on campus, the most gracious host that we have, Shawnee Community College, has asked us to make sure that you wear masks at all times. Can we get an amen to that one? Amen. And if you've been to any conferences, you know I always say the more amens I get, the quicker I sit down. So it's always good to have some audience. Amen. It's always good to have some audience participation. We had a remarkable group of vendors and exhibitors. Let's give them some love. Now, I also want you to give them some money because they're here to make a little change. Can we do shop and appreciate them that way too? They are, I'm excited that one new business is being launched through help and support of the Small Business Development Center. She's going to be serving you your lunch later, so we'll talk about that. If it's your first time to the campus, a little housekeeping. The restrooms are directly out of this door to the left, so they're very close, and then there's another set over by the gym, but this is the one we typically point you to. If you need anything during the day to make you comfortable or have questions, see me or one of the committee members. We have at least two in the back. Christy has been working registration for us. Give them a wave, Christy. All right, and you give her some love. Love you all. We have an amazing committee that's worked very, very hard, so I appreciate all of their efforts. At this time, I also just want to quickly say that there are refreshments in the back. If you did not get an opportunity for grab-and-go breakfast, you can always do that. And we are real relaxed and informal. So if you need to get up and stretch or do whatever you need to do to take care of you, because as my sister just reminded me, it's about self-care, right? Amen. That feel free to do it, but we do have scheduled breaks throughout the day. I now have the honor and privilege and pleasure of asking Russ to provide our video welcome from the newly selected president of Shawnee Community College, Dr. Tim Taylor.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Tim Taylor, President of Shawnee Community College. I want to take just a moment to welcome you to SCC. As the institution providing higher education and workforce development in our community, we value every opportunity to welcome our community partners to our campus. Shawnee College offers nursing and allied health programs for our community. As the institution providing higher education and workforce development in our community, we value every opportunity to welcome our community partners to our campus. Shawnee College offers nursing and allied health programs for our community, and I'm proud to say SCC is producing some of the best frontline workers in our region. I can attest through my own firsthand experience that the care and compassion with which they serve is second to none. The value offered by these medical professionals, coupled with the information provided from events like the one you're attending today, the African American Women's Health Conference, will go a long way towards providing the tools we need to combat the impact of COVID-19 on our community, with our friends, and in your family. I encourage you to utilize the data you are presented here today to increase your awareness, to spread this information amongst the town, your friends and neighbors. I hope it will equip you with the knowledge you need to assist them in making informed decisions and will help us combat this pandemic. Finally, if you're looking for an opportunity to train for one of the many healthcare opportunities available in our region, I also want to encourage you to consider Shawnee Community College to help you on your journey. Again, thank you for visiting us. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Can we give Dr. Taylor some in absentia love? Y'all sent me to school so I could say those $50 words from time to time. At this point, I would like to introduce Dr. Gregory Mason. Greg is the Dean of Workforce Development, Continuing Education, and Innovation. I think I got it right. And he's also been such an instrumental partner in co-sponsoring our conference this year. So Greg, would you come forward and issue your vote?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Shawnee Community College.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can appreciate how much we appreciate you, your involvement in the community, and your willingness to come out on a rainy day and participate in an event that has had phenomenal success for all the years. We're very proud to support this initiative because we think that people should remember that Shawnee Community College, the name is, the focus is community, and it is about community, and we are all part of that community, and any and everything that we, as your institution, can do to help support you, we will do that. So welcome and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn just reminded me of a housekeeping note. Please make sure you fill out the registration form, because one of the ways that you can help us is that it helps us count who all is here to show that we are serving the community. So please make sure you fill out the registration form and turn that in to Christy at the back. Thank you.
On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Advisory Board of Legacy Training, we'd like to present you with just a small token of appreciation for sponsoring this year through the Delta Health Grant. And I'm sure you can talk about that a little bit later too. Thank you, Dr. Wilson.
Hi, my name is Howard Hewitt, and I'm a Grammy.
So as Russ gets that queued up, there's a leadership development exercise that I participated in. I believe it was in the National African American Women's Leadership Institute. And we were supposed to ask people that we hope to lead, influence in our circles, what are 2 things you absolutely know about me? And if you have not done that, it is amazing what people will say and how affirming it was for me. But one of the things you probably, if I said that about myself, 2 things. I'm always busy and I love me some Howard Hewitt. So it has been just a tremendous blessing to work with an artist, an international artist, singer, songwriter, but more importantly, a social justice warrior and a genuinely caring person. And now he has an interest in Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, Western Kentucky, our region. So one of the gifts that he gave back to us was doing a public service announcement. Wherever you stand on the vaccine issue, we really believe at Legacy that it's critical. We want to get our lives back. We want to get things back to normal. We want to protect the people that we love. It's a personal choice. Talk to your physician, make the right choice. But through this campaign, we hope to give people something to think about. So we're going to be sharing, this is the world premiere of the 3 public service announcements that Legacy produced. And the first one is Mr. Howard Hewitt.
Hi, my name is Howard Hewitt, and I'm a Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter. I write love songs that celebrate the beauty of our women all over the world. So with that, ladies, can I talk to you for a minute? You are so essential. You are so valuable. You literally make the healthcare decisions for your families and all that are in your household. So with that, I'm encouraging you to get vaccinated today. The new variants that are emerging have increased the risk of becoming infected with COVID-19. The sooner you get vaccinated, the better. You not only protect yourselves, but you protect your family and all of us who love you. So, this is Howard Hewitt imploring you, get vaccinated. God bless you.
What you think? Here, all the way in California. Actually, he's in London today. So thank you for that. So this will be posted on the Legacy Facebook page, which I hope you all like and follow. It will also be posted on our webpage. There's our Webmaster Supreme. If anybody needs a great website, Terrence Henry is your man. We ask you to share these public service announcements within your group, within your families, within your circles, and just have conversations about them. It's a powerful thing. All change occurs within the context of a conversation, whether it's one you're having with someone else or the ones that you have with yourself. So will y'all do that for me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I didn't hear any amen, so I'll keep talking. All right. Now I have the pleasure and privilege. As you're well aware, Legacy Training is an interesting not-for-profit. It's very different because we have 2 focuses. We have the focus of promoting art in underserved communities, and we also have the focus of health promotion. Because as you're well aware, and we already knew, COVID exposed the fact of all of the social determinants of health and all of the disparities with people of color. We knew about it, right? That's why we've been having this conference and doing this work for a long time. So the work needs to continue. With that being said, we always start the conference with something art related. And I met this young man several years ago. We were actually doing a charity event, Dancing with the Stars, and just enjoyed him. Really didn't know he could sing at that point. And so he was going to be my dance partner until they canceled it. But I had an opportunity to get to know him. He has competed, first of all, he's a track star at Southeast Missouri State University. He is the grandson of Charles Williams. Do y'all remember Charles? He ran Hodges Funeral Home for a long time. Just was a wonderful man. Mayor of Charleston, Missouri, so he's got a great pedigree. He is pursuing his music career under his stage name as Seville. And he's here this morning, singer-songwriter, to provide a serenade to you. So listen up, ladies. More, more, more. With that, I introduce to you Anthony Williams, Seville.
Hello. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. How you doing? I just want to say I'm blessed and honored to be here today to be allowed to serenade to you all as we come together and spread and share knowledge, okay? So, without further ado, my name is Seville again, and sit back and relax for a little bit. truly been good to me. Not even one sad day or memory I've had since you come my way. I hope you know I'd gladly go anywhere you take me. It's so amazing to be loved. I'd follow you to the moon and the sky above. Yes. Got to tell you how you thrill me. I'm happy as I can be. It's so amazing to be loved. Yeah, I hope you know I'd gladly go anywhere you take me. It's so amazing to be loved. I'd follow you to the moon and the sky above. Hey, yeah. And it's so amazing, amazing that we're brought together, together. I will love you ever and ever, 'cause we've got amazing love. I can stay forever, forever. I can stay forever, forever. I will love you here and forever, 'cause we've got amazing love. Y'all ladies, y'all knocked me on my feet. I just want to let y'all know it's good singing. I see us in the park, strolling the summer days of imaginings in my head, and words from my heart, told only to the wind, felt even without being said. And I don't want to bore you with my troubles, but there's something about your love that makes me weak and knocks me off my feet. There you go. It's something about your love, hey, that makes me weak and knocks me off my feet. It knocks me off my feet, and I don't wanna bore you with this. Oh, but I love you, I love you, I love you, and I don't wanna bore you with this. Oh, but I love you, I love you, I love you more and more. We lay beneath the stars, under a lover's tree, that's seen through the eyes of my mind. And I reach out for the ball of me that lives in you, that only our two hearts can find. And I don't wanna bore you with my troubles, but there's something about your love that makes me weak and knocks me off my feet. There's something about your love that makes me weak and knocks me off my feet. It knocks me off my feet, and I don't wanna bore you with this. Oh, but I love you, I love you, I love you, and I don't wanna bore you with this. Good job.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Y'all beautiful. Thank y'all for the love. I appreciate you. Sorry I didn't notice you there. And again you didn't notice me. So we remain passers-by until the next time we speak. I'm hoping I can make you mine before another man steals your heart. And once your beauty is mine, I swear we will never be apart. Walks by me every day, her and love are the same. A woman that's stolen my heart, and beauty is your name. I hope that I can make it mine before another man steals your heart. And once your beauty is mine, I swear we will never be apart. It didn't take much time to think about that I didn't want to move too fast. But I knew that once I saw you again, that I didn't want to let you pass. 'Cause my eyes have seen the glory and the coming of your smile. So I swear if you ever come round again, please stay far away. Ooh, babe. Oh, oh, you're beautiful. Beauty is your name. Thank you. So, once again, my name is Seville. This last song, this last song I'm about to do is off of my studio album that you can find on all major platforms. It's called Connections.
Can we do one thing real quick? What do we need to do to get him? Because the Zoom audience can't see.
Just have him come back here behind the podium.
Okay. Stay and mingle, right?
Okay.
Does he need to use this mic or this one? Okay, all right. Sorry about that,
All right.
dear.
Sorry, Zone people.
All this help I got, you see you had to go fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm good. I like to move. Okay.
I just want him to stand up there a little.
I'm sure they do too. Did you set up the live stream for the Legacy page?
Not just yet, because it's supposed to be on there. I thought you guys were doing it.
You would do it on my phone?
For the website or for the Facebook?
We ideally wanted all three.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I don't think it's possible for all three.
Okay, well, which one would be the most important?
The Facebook. I thought somebody was doing. I thought that's what you guys were doing on there.
Yes, like I said, this song is off of my studio recording album that you can find on all major platforms.
Okay.
There we go. The album is called Connections, the song is called Connections. Thank you. Baby, it's cold outside. I know you want some company. I'm in the ride. I know you wanna roll with me. Let's go ride. I'll do the night. just bang my line. When you need a good time, don't worry, I'm on the way. You off work for the day, I know it must be a sign. Just bang my line when you want me to slide. Need being alone, so just pick up your phone. It was all by design. Baby, I just got your message. I knew it was you before I checked it. I just looked at your Snapchat, you're in need of a nightcap. I knew it was coming any second. It said, what time are you free? Can you come and see me? I'm in need of some love. Can you come cuddle up? And I know just what that means. Let's roll around in the sheets, yeah. It's been on my mind rent free, yeah. Say less, I'm about to pull out. Get ready for this good love. Maybe it's cold outside. I know you want some company, I'm in the ride. I know you wanna roll with me, let's go ride. All through the night, alright. Just bang my line when you need a good time. Don't worry, I'm on the way. You off work for the day, I know it must be a sign. Just bang my line when you want me to slide. No need in being alone, so just pick up your phone. It was all by design. Just bang my line. Yeah. This song was called Connections. It's off of my album called Connections. Once again, Uncle Dan. Once again, I'm honored to be up here to serenade you all today. Thank you for having me.
We have a lot of moving parts to this conference this year, but if you have a Facebook page and you want to share anything, you have our permission, and we were happy for you to do that for all the people that couldn't make it today. He was just awesome, and as always, the conference is similar in format, but we always try to make it different. I had at least one speaker, I won't mention names, okay, my cousin Adrian. Got really kind of teased with me because he wanted to come back and speak the next year. He had such a good time. And I'm like, oh, we loved you, you did an amazing job, but every year we want something different because we have people that come every year. So let me see who's in the room. How many of you have been to all 11 conferences? There we go, give her some love. You can go to the table and Miss Christie will give you a gift for that. And then I know we have someone who's been at least to 10, our queen, Anne Marie Shepherd. All right, so we appreciate that. Let's see who came the farthest. I know we have Belleville. Can anybody beat Belleville?
Cahokia.
Jackson, Tennessee. St. Louis. All right. Memphis. All right, we got Cairo. Woo woo. Sandusky. Tam. Grand Chain. Carbondale. Murfreesboro, Mound, Olmsted. All right. Sykeston, yes. Paducah, Kentucky. Woo! All right. Thank you all so very much. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, our keynote speaker. What a privilege and a pleasure it is to introduce you to Rachel Jones. First of all, she's a native of Cairo. Anybody know Rachel already? All right. And Russ, remember we were going to do something? So at least one person knows Rachel. Rachel is one of the most marvelous things, our gift from Southern Illinois. She's a communications consultant, a contributing writer for National Geographic magazine. So let's raise up your National Geographics and give Rachel some love. Everybody got a copy in your honor, Rachel, of that wonderful magazine. She's also a media advisor for the Aspen Institute and the Emerson Collective. We will post the speakers' longer bios on the webpage, so I won't read all of it, but I just want you to know that she has done some amazing work over in Africa. She's been an advisor to UNICEF Kenya, and she's done a lot with polio, something we don't think about because what eradicated it, y'all? Vaccines. All right. So she's also contributed to National Public Radio. She's, I remember reading articles when she wrote for Essence. So again, just when people talk about Cairo, do remember that we have had some amazing people come from our area that have done amazing things. So without further ado, I give you our morning keynote speaker, Rachel Jones.
Lynn Chambers, for allowing me to participate and share in this experience. Her commitment to the well-being of women and girls around the world, really, certainly in our region, has been unwavering and never questioned. But I have to tell you, Lynn, if you had told me you knew Howard Hewitt, you probably wouldn't have had to negotiate us any kind of a speaker's fee or anything else out. We could have worked that out right away. I also want to thank Shawnee College staffers and administration for creating this space, this virtual space for us to be in, as well as the Carbondale Public Library staff as well. So, I need to start my remarks today with a confession. At the time, I had absolutely no idea how I made it through the last 18 months. In March of 2020, I had to leave the office of the most prestigious, high-paying job I'd ever had. And then I had to navigate the challenges of working from home, which I'm sure most of us agree involves a refrigerator. On May 1st, 2020, I got laid off from that prestigious, highest paying job that I'd ever had. And I had about 5 hours notice to get myself together and move on. Oh, and by the way, then there's COVID. You have to make the decision whether or not you're going to barricade yourself in your apartment to try to stay safe. And then you have to try to avoid watching too much news coverage about the sickness and death. It's wrenching. Oh, and then there was a time that I had to try to support my best friend via text through the Zoom funeral of her eldest brother who passed from COVID. This past year has yielded so many scenarios that too many of us would have thought would be science fiction. We would not have believed what we've been through if you told us about it 5 years ago. Most recently, I also have to confess that the month of August has been especially difficult for me. But then August always is difficult. Those of us who can relate to having a somewhat difficult relationship with our fathers can understand why on August 7th, I spent a lot of time thinking of Lewis Jones. That was his birthday. And then August 14th rolls around, which was the day he passed. Oh, but then wait, there's August 17th, which is the birthday, or was the birthday of my eldest sister, Julie. She was my second mother and role model and best friend. And she would have been 71 years old this past August 17th, but she passed when she was 57 years old. So, here I am, about to move into this pivotal decade of my own life. And it feels like most days the world is literally crumbling around us. You got 120-degree temperatures in Portland, Oregon. We've got wildfires in Greece. We've got earthquakes in Haiti. And then, of course, there's this biblical plague that half the people in America don't even believe exists. You top that off by what I've been experiencing lately, which is sort of grieving for the women and girls of Afghanistan, when I think of the collective trauma that they may be experiencing. And then if you try to take your mind off of that, go back to Haiti and what the people there are suffering. So you see where I'm going with this, right? For myself, as I do make this transition, when everything else just simply does not make sense anymore, what does? And the rest of my time this morning will be spent focusing on what I believe, which is that owning our stories and speaking our truths could possibly be the most healthy thing that we will ever do. I came to that realization about 3 years ago when I was asked to cover the issue of Black women and maternal mortality for National Geographic. I'm the 9th of 10 children, but I decided very early on that I never wanted to be pregnant. Probably because early on, Eloise Jones said that if you ever get pregnant without bringing a husband into this house, I will kill you. It had a very powerful impact on my reproductive health decision. I'm strong in a lot of ways, but it just was something that ultimately I decided I never wanted to go through. But then I had the chance to witness a birth at a hospital in Washington, D.C. as part of that journalism assignment. And then 2 things happened. First, I realized I'd made the right decision. Secondly, I realized that my mother, the indomitable Eloise Jones, had gone through that experience 10 times. And now, one of the greatest regrets of my entire life is that I never once asked her about her pregnancy and childbirth experiences. I would give anything, quite literally, if I could interview her for National Geographic and ask her to talk about health equity, healthcare access. I was born in St. Mary's Hospital, but I think it was only me and my younger sister, Rebecca. Everybody else was born at home. What was that like? Who was the older woman down the street that my mother asked to come and help her deliver her children? What did she do? Did she have postpartum depression? All the questions of the issues that I cover and report on now, I don't have a chance to talk to my mother about it. So, again, how can I truly understand my life and my story without understanding that connection? So, I vowed, because of the will and the energy and the life that she imbued into me, that I would spend the rest of my days living an authentic life. I would try to embody that energy that she breathed into me. So now I want to shift to my PowerPoint slides that I've sent ahead, because I want to talk about this issue of telling our stories. Recently I did a storytelling workshop for Trinity Church in New York City. And it was a powerful experience, and I thought that it would also be somewhat beneficial today. So this first slide obviously is something that when I saw this on Instagram, it resonated with me. No one is you, and that is your superpower. Sounds like something out of Dr. Seuss, but it's really true. No matter what you may think about your strengths or weaknesses, It's you. Own it. Next slide, please. So this is where my story began. Daughter of Louis and Eloise, sister of 9 Joneses. I call myself, I think of that line from The Wizard of Oz, Rachel, the small and meek. That's who I was. That picture, by the way, I had fallen on a monkey bar shortly before it was taken and broken my 2 front teeth. So from about that age 8 or 9, till probably early teens, when we were able to afford, or a free dentist came to Cairo and I got my front teeth fixed, I never showed my teeth. I never smiled. So that was me. And of course, the riverbank is where all the young people used to go and sit and dream and think about what our futures would hold. Next slide. But October 3rd, 2021 is a day that will usher in, for me, the big 6-0.
Happy birthday.
Mind over matter. You don't mind, it don't matter. The rest of my days. Next slide. The way we see ourselves is a very personal thing, and it can change from day to day, depending on random things like our mood, our career status, or even our weight. And I chose this meme, the picture on the left. It was very popular a few years ago when it first came out, because that baby looks like she's been here before. All of our grandmothers, she looks like she would slap the taste out of all of them. But I had taken an accidental screenshot of myself, picture on the right, and I noticed that for the first time in my life, I have a double chin, thanks to COVID. And I spent a lot of time mourning and being upset about that when I first really thought about it. And then I realized, hey, I'm looking more and more like Eloise every day and loving every day I wake up. Next slide, please. But the way we define ourselves to the world can change from year to year, from decade to decade. And at any given moment, our ability to communicate who we are and what we're about is the most powerful tool we can have. And I include this picture because if any of you have not seen the movie Beasts of the Southern Wild, you should. And I'm probably gonna watch it again real soon. But this little girl, the pivotal character, Hush Puppy was her name. I cried, laughed, related to this child. She's a survivor of Hurricane Katrina, and she and her father navigate the landscape after that. So it's just a powerful movie about triumphing over tragedy and physical restraints, etc. Next slide. Defining moments can shape your story. This is one for me, quite literally. This was July 7th, 2007 in northern Uganda, small town village called Gulu. But there was a refugee camp outside of Gulu. Northern Uganda spent about at least, well, some say it's still going, civil war, but 20 years of civil war by a terrorist group called the Lord's Resistance Army. And in the year after they signed the peace treaty, an organization asked me to go over and train radio journalists. I was working in National Public Radio at the time. But when I tell you that in that moment, I am literally crossing my arms to try to keep from panicking or fleeing, it's because you rarely see a woman taking the lead and sort of leading anything in a setting like this in many African countries. And so this is probably the first time many of the men in that circle had ever allowed a woman to, take charge in a meeting setting. So it was a powerful moment for me, and it taught me a lot about my concerns about gender and women and women's roles in society. Next slide. But during that day, and again, it was July 7th, 2007, so many people thought of it as a, quote, lucky day, 7707. But for me, I spent that day watching the children in this refugee camp. And children will play with a rock and a stick and a piece of cloth and think they're having the best time in the world. And those children taught me more about joy, energy, and resilience than anything else in my life. Next slide. And these girls, in many African countries and many developing nation countries, the women essentially do most of the work, certainly to keep the home together, but women also do 70% of the agricultural work on the African continent. And these little girls, the girls in northern Uganda shave their heads, primarily obviously to keep the lice and the other issues down or whatever, but these little girls could work harder, outwork me, outdo me, pumping water from the borehole, taking care of their younger siblings. They're stronger than I will ever be, as long as I live. Next slide. So, I've been blessed because of Julie Newell, because of Eloise Jones, Willis Jones, all my older brothers and sisters who really were role models for me, to make some choices, to stretch myself, to take some risks, and expand the frame of my life story. The first picture is at that refugee camp. The second picture is, black and white one, is in Somaliland, north of Somalia. I was there for the National Geographic story, and I met this amazing midwife who, again, taught me more about women's reproductive health challenges around the world. Third picture, going counterclockwise, is me doing a journalism training in South Sudan, and that was during the war, while the war was still going on. And then the fourth picture is me in Nairobi, where I spent 9 years living, training journalists in about health issues. Next slide. So how has my professional story changed from 1986 to 2021? Well, I've gone from being a local reporter, covering the cops and car crashes and county fairs at newspapers in Florida and Detroit, to thinking of myself as a global citizen. I've gone from being that boots on the ground solo journalist to what they called me in East Africa, the mama hen. I was the teacher. I was the person who brought people together and nurtured them and helped them believe that they could become reporters. I've gone from being that mentor to what I'll talk about soon, to being a coach, a writing coach. I've gone from working on somebody's staff to being a consultant, working on my own. And some of you, I hope you'll pardon my French here, well, my language, but I've gone from being that good girl in Cairo, Illinois, to a grown-ass 60-year-old woman. Every minute of that journey, every second of that story. And again, these pictures at the bottom show that. The one is from the refugee camp, and the one in the middle is me leading a press conference about anti-malarial resistance in Nairobi, something that, I still don't know how I got through that. And the third picture is me at the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Every time I go there, I'm in awe of the history behind that and what it means. So that's how things have changed. But I tell people lately, I guess first I should ask, did the video come through? Are we able to use that? Because I wanted to pivot from what I've been doing and what I've accomplished to the thing that I think has helped me survive the past year and a half. And that is, the bulk of what I do now is support people like most of the people in the audience at Shawnee College today, people like Lynn, people around the world who are reproductive justice activists, who are community health advocates, who are executive directors of community health organizations, who are just doing the boots on the ground work in communities to support and nurture women, children, families all over the world. I am a writing coach and mentor for the Aspen Institute, a think tank, a sort of a engine, incubator really, for ideas that help make society better. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. And that began in about 3 years ago. And because I'd done this work on the African continent, I was asked to join the Aspen Institute to do that work with individual fellows. So there's the New Voices Fellowship, which is an international fellowship that works with these people in countries around the world, global south, I should say. And this is to get more diverse voices to discuss issues like reproductive health. And then they started a new fellowship called the Healthy Communities Fellowship. And so I work with these community activists, midwives, water rights activists, One woman this year is working on pregnant women in prison. So all of these are women, mostly primarily, who are doing this incredible work during this incredibly anxious time. And they want to expand their voices. And so I help them to write op-eds. I help them to prepare to give speeches, public speeches. I do this work to pay my bills. And so I wanted to show you a 5-minute clip, hopefully we're able to do that, of a young woman in Minnesota, Minneapolis. She's actually a refugee. She was born in Ethiopia, eventually made her way with her mother to Minneapolis. But she's the executive director of an organization in Minneapolis that supports women to get education, women who are victims of domestic violence. And she does this incredible work. But when she was asked to talk about herself and to tell her story, she said, I don't want to do that. That's not necessary. The work is not about me. The work is about the community. And she resisted it. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want people to sort of stereotype her as the poor refugee girl who, rose above the obstacles. She didn't want that conversation. She wanted the spotlight to be on her clients. And so we worked over the course of a month or so, and I wanted to share with you the power that she felt and that she expressed after the process finished, and she had to make a public presentation of what she had written about her life and her story. So if we could cue that up and play that, let's do that right now. Her name is Lulit, by the way. I think if Russ can't upload it. I hope we can do this.
59, right?
59, about
ability
59 minutes should do
to
it.
put is about investing of yourself in the system that enables people to find power, investing in others, in their vision of what they can be and who they can be and how they can continue to create impact. So thank you so
Even if we
much.
can't see her, we can at least hear her.
Our next
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I'll be getting the hang of this now.
Okay, here we
Our
go.
next SOAR fellow is Lulit. And Lulit, if I did not say your name properly, please correct me, please. We're going to have you come on camera, and Lulit is going to talk to us about women like her mother, like my mother. And the word that I think of is courage. When I looked at your resume and your bio, and the notion of the ability to put humanity in action, which was an award, I believe that you won. And that to me is about courage. How do we bring humanity forward? How do we lift that up regardless of our circumstances? So please, come off of mute, and we're ready to hear you and eager to hear you. So thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lulit. So, I've always loved the morning. In my earliest memory, I am 6 years old and I am shuffling through morning crowds to get a jug of holy water in my hometown of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. My neighborhood's name was Godla Mikael. My grandfather, Ababa, was losing his eyesight, and I believed the water was medicine. So I did this every single day. I'd wake up early in the morning. I would throw my grandmother a Maye's scarf over my head, and I would walk to the church to carry out my responsibility. I lived with my grandparents, my mother, my sister, and all of my aunts and uncles. We ate every meal together and gathered twice a day where we would gather over coffee ceremonies, and my aunts would laugh hysterically at the latest family events. We lived there because my mother had returned home again. She couldn't take the beatings anymore and worried about the safety of her girls if she stayed. The night before we left, she woke up to being cut on her face with a small knife. We were all scared. I think that was her last straw. It was a hard time for her. She was trying to heal and figure out how she was going to support us on her own. I worried with her. But the worry couldn't compete with the infinite love I felt from my family. So I was so proud of my responsibility of fetching holy water. The next year, I remember attending church far away. And I remember being with my mother. I remember her praying. I remember how she gave her worries to God. And I remember her praying for the well-being of my sister and I. Soon after those prayers, we would be quickly saying goodbye to all that we knew and loved to start a journey out of Ethiopia, first to Nairobi, Kenya, and if everything went well, to America. The next memory is of another morning. This time, I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. I am 6, and I am walking through a neighborhood called Eastleigh. My mother had sent me to deliver pasta to her good friend who just lived a few blocks away. I remember how I felt walking through Eastleigh. I could feel the warmth of the morning sun because my head had just been shaved. I was wearing a blue and red striped dress that stopped right at my knees, and I remember that I felt so loved, and as if that particular day was made especially for me. Walking down the street, I didn't think of myself as the daughter of a refugee single mother who didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring. During that time, about 4 of us slept in a room the size of a college dorm with no furniture, one warm bed, which was a mattress on the ground, and that room also served as our living room, as our kitchen, as our playroom, and everything else we needed it to be. My mother always said, where there's love, there's room. When we first got there, I didn't understand why we had to leave our beloved home. The truth is, we were fleeing domestic violence, lack of economic opportunity, and a future that was defined for us before we were even born. We heard of the American dream, and like many, gave up everything we had in pursuit of that dream. Sometimes, before falling asleep, Mama would tell us stories of how it would be when we arrived. She would tell us about the schools we would attend. I remember I cared the most about having my own dresser. But there was no guarantee that we were ever going to make it. A lot of our journey depended on how many people were applying for refugee visas or how generous the visa officers felt on that day. But just 5 months later, we would be considered the lucky ones and receive our visas and continue our journey to the United States of America. In our new home, it seems like Mama worried more. She struggled more and was more alone. While she continued to pour everything she had into us, it seemed like systems and structures were only taking from her. As I watched her struggle, I remember thinking how I would do anything to create a world that loved and honored her as much as I did. With all that was going on around us, my mother made sure our home continued to be one that was nurturing, full of love and joy. She created room for me to develop my voice and question everything that I saw around me. Why did women experience so much violence? I would ask her. Why are Black people like us deemed less than in this country because of the color of our skin? How come many of my teachers had such low expectations of me? Why did we leave home if this was going to be the conditions of our new life? She would encourage me in expressing myself. but also remind me to be grateful, to have pride. She showed us that our circumstances did not define us, but rather our history and potential did. This allowed me to hold my head high while believing change was possible. Today, I work tirelessly for gender and racial justice, with dignity as a foundational value. I am grounded in visionary Black politics and place the well-being of women and girls at the center of my work. I'm committed to strategically disrupting systems that simply do not work. I build on new ideas at the intersections of issues and solutions and bring people with me as we build a more just society. At 15, I created a young women's power and leadership group that focused on the genius of girls in families and communities. Since then, I've scaled the best parts of that program to shape my career and make national impact, providing women and girls with stories like mine support as they lead and innovate. Like Audre Lorde, I believe I am and we are deliberate and afraid of nothing. To this day, I love mornings because I love the promise of a new day, the idea of possibilities and the coming of new beginnings. And every morning, I wake up with a purpose to shape a world that loves and honors women like my mother. Thank you.
And feel how absolutely blessed and privileged I feel to work with dozens of women like Lulit, who may feel that their story is secondary to the work that they do. Her power comes from her journey. So to conclude, I want to show one more slide if we can, the last slide in my presentation, to talk about how we know ourselves and our own stories. Actually, the next one after this one, if you would. The last slide is me at the Pilates class. I mean, I've become obsessed now with Pilates because it's always something that I thought I would never be able to do, I would be afraid to do, I never want to do. But I plan for my 60s to be my healthiest, most flexible, strongest decade of my life. So my message to you and to this meeting is those of us who survive these traumatic, isolating, uncertain days, there's one thing that you always have to remember, that you are stronger than you think you are. So thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this conference, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Rachel. That was absolutely phenomenal. Do we have any questions for Rachel before we move to our next speaker? Any questions, comments? Fantastic. Anything? Yes, there's a question there.
Remember, did she say how she got started in the world that she's in?
The question is, Rachel, how did you get started in the world that you're in?
Books, quite literally. I've said it a million times, but my mother took all 10 of her children to the Carroll Public Library when we were old enough to be allowed in the doors without, needing to be babysat. And she got us library cards. And I was reading science fiction by the time I was 9 or 10 years old, but The Wizard of Oz and all of these images that we had, even though we were poor, to me, it showed me that there was a larger world out there. There was, things that I could do and be, even though I don't have access to them now. If I keep myself together and keep my grades up and do right, it can happen for me. So quite literally, even though ironically we were raised Jehovah's Witnesses, which helps you to, or advises you to stay separate from the world, I knew by the time I was 8 that I was going to travel the world. I knew that that was my mission and that was what I wanted to do and that I would do it. So that would be the most direct answer to that question.
Thank you. Great question and great answer. We have another one here.
What was your first job? What was your first job? That made you do it?
My goodness, I'm trying to remember that. What was that summer program in Cairo?
Sita?
Yeah, it was a senior job, and I can't remember where it was, but it was an administrative job, just as a filing or whatever. But my first actual 9 to 5 was in Evanston, Illinois. I was the secretary to the wrestling coach at Northwestern University. But again, I am a journalist because my sister Marilyn is brilliant, great writer. She would write these funny short stories, and then she went to Southern Illinois University. And by the end of her freshman year, they wanted her to be the newspaper editor for the next year. First time in history that had ever happened. That's how good of a writer she was. But she quit to become a full-time missionary as a Jehovah's Witness. And she's been faithful to her beliefs, and she's been doing that for the past 40 years or whatever. But I said, dang it, Marilyn was supposed to be the world-famous journalist. And if she's not gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So that's kind of how I got into the journalism game.
Awesome. Thank you. One more question, Josie?
Well, it's not really a question, it's just saying a hello to Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Hello. I'm Josie Eason. You remember Josie
Oh my
Eason?
goodness, yes, I remember you.
It is so wonderful to see you. So wonderful to see you. It's been years. And I'm so proud of you. So proud of all of your accomplishments in your life.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And it's good seeing you. God bless you.
Bless you too, Josie.
And of course, she'll make a wonderful addition to the African American Museum that Josie and Willie have in Mounds. I think she's definitely someone that needs to be a part of that. Hasn't she made history? Let's give her some love, you guys. Thank you so much. And Rachel, you're welcome to hang out with us as long as you can. We have our next speaker, and this is another just amazing individual, Dr. Damon T. Arnold. He's a medical doctor. He has a master's in public health from the University of Illinois, both of those degrees, as well as a master's in security studies from the Center for Homeland Defense and Security at the Naval Postgraduate School, War College. How about that, y'all? He's completed residencies not only in internal medicine, but also occupational and environmental medicine. I met him when he was serving as the director of the Illinois Department of Public Health. If you guys remember, Legacy used to coordinate the Wellness on Wheels band, and we did a lot of HIV education, outreach, and support. This was something, and again, his longer bio will be posted, but this is something I also found very interesting. He's had a distinguished military career, so he's also Colonel Arnold, serving for 26 years as a commander of the Illinois State Joint Task Force Medical Command, as well as a qualified Black Hawk helicopter flight surgeon. Wow. He was awarded the coveted Legion of Merit by President Barack Obama, as well as 3 Army Commendation Medals and 2 National Defense Service Medals. And check this one out. He was officially and formally knighted by the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem. Wow. He lives in Chicago with his wife, Sharon Johnson Arnold. He's a painter, so that's also a great connection. We love artists and want him in the Legacy family and that side too. And with his lovely wife Sharon Johnson Arnold and their bossy cat Sophia. So without further ado, we've asked Dr. Arnold, and I kind of gave him this title because when I think about COVID-19, it's all about conspiracy theories and all of the interesting conversations we've been had, but we wanted someone to really talk to us about science and update us about the pandemic and how we will continue to not only survive, we will thrive after this. Amen? Amen. All right, Dr. Arnold, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to first of all thank our lives, our stories. Your 11th summit is a testament to survival in itself in a very difficult time, and you're doing things that are tremendous for the power and empowerment of Black women throughout this country and world by the example that you're setting. And I wanted to thank Lynn so much for your kind words, and also the Shawnee College and Carbondale Public Library. And all I can say is, Rachel Jones, you rock. That was a phenomenal presentation. I really enjoyed listening to every word that you said. And so I want to start off with telling a little bit of a story. There were about 502,000 lives, and President Biden and Vice President Harris were standing in the Washington Mall back in February 28th of this year. So over 502,000 lives have been lost at that point. And as of the 19th of this month, we have 624,318 lives lost in this country. And one of the things that I like to always say, this is a quote that I made, it was, remember, science never asks for you to believe in it, but it is incredibly unforgiving if you do not. So if you choose to step off the edge of a cliff and not believe in gravity, gravity cares nothing about what you think on all the way down. And if you do survive at the bottom of the cliff, you get to the point where maybe you'll become a believer. But science moves itself without any regard to what we think is correct. It is part of the natural order of things of the universe, so we have to keep that in mind. So if we start looking at this information from Johns Hopkins University, Health and Human Services, which is in Washington, D.C., and then the World Health Organization, this data is of the 19th of this month. And if you look at the global level, we have about 4.4 million deaths in the world. And we've had a total amount of about 4.8 billion. 4.8 billion, I'm saying billion, it should be T, right? Trillion. 4.8 trillion vaccine doses administered throughout the world. Largest vaccination campaign in the history of this world. And if you look at the United States, we've had about 624,318 deaths, as I was mentioning. And then we also have about 37 million cases of COVID. And we look at the total number of doses administered, about 357.5 million doses that have been given out in this country. But when we start looking at the distribution, this is from the Kaiser Family Foundation located in California. If we start looking at this, the Kaiser Foundation is showing 65% of Asians are vaccinated, 48% of whites, 41% of Hispanics, and 36% of African Americans. And this is nationwide. So there is a deficit. It looks like we are really behind the curve in trying to get people vaccinated and to protect them. And as I go along, I'll give you some of the reasons why we should be protecting ourselves. Here's a picture of Illinois, and if you look at Illinois, we have a total of about 26,000 confirmed plus probable deaths that have occurred in our state. We have about 11,792 variant cases that have been identified as of the 18th of this month. And then we also start looking at the composition of the different types of variants. There's an alpha variant, that's the UK variant or United Kingdom variant. We have a beta variant, that's the Brazilian variant. We have a Delta variant that came from India. So we started switching to using the Greek alphabet rather than naming the countries these came from. We also have Lambda variants that are out there as well, and we have the variants that came in from California, New York, and from the southern states as well. If you look at July 30 of 2021, and you start looking at these color-coded maps, blue is low, yellow is moderate, orange is substantial, and then high is red. This is the transmission of the virus, how fast it's spreading in these areas. And as you can see, the western portion of Illinois State and the southern portion of Illinois State were the hardest hit initially by the Delta virus. A lot of this has to do with other states that are surrounding us. Iowa, Missouri had a very, very high rate, and it came across the border. So the virus doesn't respect borders. It does not recognize what we demarcate as states, countries, or continents. It can go from one person to another. That's all the virus is concerned with. But this is in July. Look at this. From about 17 days later, you have the entire state in red. That's how fast this thing traveled. So a little bit over a little bit over 2 weeks, it was already spreading across the entire state. So as we were looking at this, I said, well, one of the things that we have to think about, but what's about the hospitals? How are we doing with making sure that things are in good stead? If we look at the different areas, if you follow this arrow, we have 11 emergency operations regions within Illinois. So this is number one. It's up in the number one is actually up in the left upper corner of our state, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 is in the bottom tip of our state. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is Cook County. 11 is Chicago. So this is how we start looking at things. So we have to be familiar with these terms when they are giving us data. We have to become more data sensitive and understand the intent of why that data is being shared with us. But if you look at the hospital resources, about 437 COVID patients occupying 3,162 staffed ICU beds. So that's the proportion that we have, about 437 cases as of the 18th. 215 patients, COVID patients, were on ventilators in these intensive care units. And so as we're going further, I wanted to first dispel some myths that are out there. This was online, so I redacted the names of the people who were on this post, but this was actually on June 11th, and it was about the Tuskegee experiment on social media. What they were saying is that black people thought they were receiving free health care, but instead were injected with syphilis. This was conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service. It happened over a period of 40 years between 1932 to 1972. And if you can look at the total number of people who were following, 5,134 people. And then there was someone who actually was in nursing school who said that she was astonished she learned about this and how they did these poor men and that kind of thing. And then it came up where it says, U.S. government offers free health care to Southern rural black, intentionally injects them with syphilis, still want a corona vaccine. So this is the thing, that's Tuskegee experiment. And I have this in quotation marks because there is a distinction between an experiment and a study. So if we go to the next, what was right about what you just saw? Well, first of all, no one was injected with syphilis. What that was not an experiment, it was a study. What they did was they diagnosed these men as having syphilis, and then they refused to give them penicillin when it became readily available in 1964. So what they decided to do was not to give them the advances that have been made in medical science to cure syphilis. They just let it go unimpeded and allowed them to spread it throughout their family lines into next generations. So The problem is that if we look at the COVID vaccine, it's very analogous to this, in that if they told you you could not get vaccinated, then that would be the Tuskegee study. If they told you you were not able to have modern science prevent you from getting sick and dying, then you were automatically putting yourself into the same position as those men in the Tuskegee study down in Alabama. So that's the first myth. Now, Onesimus was actually an African slave who was living in Boston, and he landed in Boston around 1706. So in 1706, Cotton Mather was a minister, and his congregation bought Onesimus, and he gave him the name Onesimus because it's based on a biblical character, and what it means is useful. Now, Onesimus actually told them there is a practice that was used in Africa to protect you from getting smallpox. It was called variolation. It had been practiced for generations in Africa to protect people from getting smallpox, and also for vaccinating children with small amounts of snake venom to stop them from dying if they were to get a snake bite. So actually, vaccinations began in Africa way before Jenner claimed to have had the vaccination right in 1764. Before that, Onesimus told them and saved tens of thousands of lives in Boston. This is before the American Revolution, before the Boston Tea Party. If he had not done what he had done, we may not have the country we have today. Many of the people who were part of the Revolutionary War may have been dead. So he changed the course of history by sharing something. And of course, what happened was that he didn't get the credit for it, right? The people who got the credit for it were his slave master and another doctor, both of them being inducted into the Royal Society of Medicine in London. And so he got no credit, no recognition whatsoever for it. So in 1980, the World Health Organization declared smallpox entirely eradicated due to the spread of immunization worldwide. So we actually eradicated the disease through inoculations, through getting vaccinated. When I was in Uganda, I went to Uganda, I still saw the effects of polio. I walked through a polio ward where children were having problems with their orthopedic ambulation, their ability to walk. And so we had orthopedic surgeons there who were trying to give them corrective devices to get them to walk again. So I want to also talk to you about a little bit about cardiovascular and metabolic pathways, and I'm glad Rachel was talking about maintaining health. Now, if you look at your health, meats, saturated fat, sugar, salt, smoking, alcohol, drugs, even sexually transmitted infections cause high oxidative stress in your body, inflammation. You've heard about gluten and all those other things. What they do is they actually fill in the blood vessels so that it minimizes the amount of blood flowing through your blood vessels. This is the beginning of diabetes. This is the effect of heart disease, of people having strokes, and people having kidney failure. It all starts with how we're treating our blood vessels in our body. So if you were to go to a fruit, vegetable, nuts, and whole grain diet, vitamin D3 is a hormone that quiets down the immune system so you don't overreact. So these things, phytochemicals from plants, vitamins, this causes a low oxidative stress, decreases the inflammation, and decreases the amount of stress in your body. This leads to optimal health and good health and a maximized lifespan. Why is a maximized lifespan so important? Well, as we are the people who have been hit the hardest by COVID-19, many people will never, ever see the benefits of their 401k. of their Social Security, of their pensions, because they'll be dying too soon. So all that money that you put into your 401k, into your pensions, that you try to get, Social Security goes to the people who survive. And that is mostly in the white population. So as a black man, as a black woman, you have a shorter lifespan than a white woman. The white men are between black men and black women. But you're still minimizing the amount of time you get the benefits of what you put your whole life into working for. Now, I have this thing down here with SARS-CoV-2. So the severe acute respiratory syndrome of COVID-19, COVID, which is coronavirus, is a virus that attacks these same blood vessels. So this is the virus that causes COVID-19, which is coronavirus disease of 2019. Other things that you also find is stress in the limbic system and emotions. So people are under a lot of stress. It can cause loneliness, depression, suicide, anger, frustration, mental clouding, all these things. Substance abuse has increased. We've had a 60% increase in the number of people who died from overdoses from opioids. And it has been hitting particularly hard the African American community. So I put this here because I want people to realize that we have emotional reactions to COVID-19 and it's putting undue stresses on us that we have to pay attention to. And those people who already have underlying mental health issues, it's exacerbating, it's making it worse for them. So as we're opening up, our churches are being overrun by people who need to be taken care of from a spiritual, mental health perspective as well as a physical health. So what are some of the things that happen with this virus? So it can cause fatigue and shortness of breath and difficulty breathing and a cough, joint or muscle pain, chest pain, tightness or heaviness. It can also, cause a faster pounding heart, so it can actually upset the rhythm of the heart. So usually after having this particular virus, it can actually cause your heart beat to speed up. It can actually lead to more of a likelihood of having a heart attack. For those people who have coronary artery disease and people who are older. Also can cause headaches and memory changes. We've heard about these, loss of smell or olfactory or taste. This is the central nervous system. This is the brain that this virus is actually working on. And I said the blood vessels, they're throughout your body. So the blood vessels in your brain, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, your stomach, right? All the organs in your body have blood vessels that supply them. And then there's also depression, anxiety people are feeling, and worsening symptoms after physical or mental activities, exhaustion. Now, this is from the Mayo Clinic. And this is the early findings, and this is why I think it's so important for every adult and every child, and when it becomes available for people who are less than 12 years old, for them to become vaccinated. What they're finding right now in autopsy studies, when people die, they do look at the organs. And what they're finding in the heart is that they are showing death of myocardial tissue, that's muscle tissue in the heart. They're showing blood clots and very small blood vessels in the heart tissue. And as a result, we don't know if you already have high blood pressure, if you already have diabetes, if you already have some other underlying heart condition, whether this is going to make it worse. And the bad thing about this as well is that they're finding this happening not just in people who have chronic disease, but in people who are otherwise healthy as well. So arrhythmias are just abnormal rhythms in the heart, electrical activity in the heart, how it beats. And they're seeing that there's an increase in these abnormal patterns. In the lungs, there's also the alveoli, the sacs, the air sacs that pick up oxygen and transport it into the blood. Those are being scarred. They're seeing fibrosis, almost like cotton tissue in the lungs. So the lungs can't expand because you have this really scarred tissue that can't allow you to breathe. And one of the things is Delta can result in extensive lung tissue damage. And I'll talk about that in a second a little bit more, but Delta in particular. And my wife was actually walking on a path, doing one of her 2-mile walks and 3-mile walks, and she ran across one of her friends who was a triathlete. And this triathlete, she was like the ultimate performer in athletics, right? Loved to swim, loved to bike, loved to run, everything, marathons, one after another. Ate a healthy diet, and was very similar to what I am. I'm vegan, myself personally, but she was an athlete who just watched her health. And she said, 5 months ago, I was offered the vaccine, and I turned it down. I said, why do I need the vaccine? I'm healthy, I'm eating right, I'm exercising all the time. And then she looked at my wife and she said, I was wrong. Because 1 month after they offered it to me, I ended up in a hospital in an intensive care unit. And they had me on this ventilator for 4 weeks. When I got off, my lungs were scarred. The doctors told me this is probably going to be chronic because of the damage you're seeing on the x-ray films of the lungs. So now she said, I can barely make it around this circle once walking. This is a triathlete. So it has changed her entire life, not only physically, but from a mental perspective, that she has to deal with the consequences of making the wrong choice. Now for the brain, even in young people, they're finding them having strokes and seizures. And Guillain-Barré syndrome, the Guillain-Barré syndrome is really an ascending motor paralysis. It starts in the feet, it comes up through the muscles in the body, and it can go up to your diaphragm, which you need for breathing. So this is really one of those syndromes that people say, well, I can get Guillain-Barré if I get vaccinated. There is a very, very rare risk of getting Guillain-Barré if vaccinated, but much more of a risk of getting Guillain-Barré just from getting COVID-19. So you're actually minimizing your risk by getting vaccinated, getting Guillain-Barré. So another myth that's out there. But what they've also found in the Mayo Clinic is that this is tied to Parkinson's disease development and Alzheimer's disease. They're finding correlates between these very strong correlates. So the Delta variant, we call it Delta variant. I always say Delta variants because there are at least 15 different mutation types of the Delta variant. So these variants actually allow cells to stick together, so they fuse the cells together. And what happens is that if the virus goes from one cell to the next, it is unable to be picked up by the antibodies, your natural protection, the proteins in your blood that actually bind to it and stick to it and take it out of your circulation so that you don't get sick. But as mentioned before, the Delta variant, 1,000 times more viruses are in your body than with the Alpha variant, which is the UK variant, the formal one. And the ability to spread this virus from person to person is 50 to 60% more for the Delta variant than for the Alpha variant. The Alpha variant itself is already 50% more likely to be spread than the original virus was from Wuhan, China. So as we're seeing these variants appear, the longer we have people who are unvaccinated, we have sort of like petri dishes out there in society where these viruses can mutate. And the more likely it is that we'll have more variants arising with people who are unvaccinated in our population. Now, the CDC reported all these cases, about 6,587 breakthrough cases in July. And this is what I want you to really pay attention to, this middle statement. Okay, so if you were looking at the breakthrough cases, okay, the total people who are fully vaccinated, less than 0.004%, that means a little bit, of fully vaccinated people had a breakthrough case that led to hospitalization, and less than 0.001% of fully vaccinated people died from a breakthrough COVID case. Now, if you look at this number, the 0.001%, that means you have 99.999% of people who died were unvaccinated. That should be telling you something. The people who died in the largest amount were people who were unvaccinated. So that means 1 in 1 0, 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros. So, you know, the vaccine is effective, it works, and it's keeping people from dying and going into the hospital. So, what did they look at in the UK? So they looked at what happens when you have one single dose, and this is from Moderna, was the study that they did. They also had Pfizer, but 31% effective at preventing illness with the Delta, and 75% effective at preventing hospitalization. That's for a single dose of a 2-dose vaccine. If you get 2 doses, it's 80% protection from illness and 94% protection from being hospitalized. Now, why is it so important not to be hospitalized? Because you can survive, you can live, but look at the hospitalization cost, the loss of time from work, the interruption of your life, the sickness and illness, and we don't know if you're going to get the long COVID syndrome. That's why you want to stay out of the hospital. You don't want to get to the point where this virus takes such a foothold in your body that you suffer the consequences of this long term. So what is the current immunization data showing? So we have the 3rd booster, right? Everyone's talking about this. So the 3rd booster dose, the reason why it's important is that what they found, and this is from Dr. Fauci and from the Surgeon General and the director for the CDC, but antibody levels decline over time. So what they're finding is that over time, the antibodies that vaccine was able to make your body have and create start to decline over about 6 to 8 months. And it's really kind of interesting because if you are vaccinated and you're pregnant, which the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology recommends strongly, because they're seeing people who are not vaccinated who are pregnant having a much more difficult course of pregnancy and being hospitalized. So what they're recommending is you get vaccinated. Now, if you do get vaccinated and you're pregnant, you produce antibodies that cross the placental barrier and go to the baby and protect the baby for 6 to 8 months after it's born. The babies, when they're born, they don't have the ability to develop immunity like we normally would as adults. Their immune systems are immature, so it's very difficult for them to defend themselves against bacteria, viruses, fungal infections, those sorts of things. Why do they have the ability to resist those things? From their mom. The mother gives the baby antibodies to protect it from things in the environment that it would encounter that would kill it if it were not immunized by the mom, given this antibodies, passive immunity. So by getting vaccinated, you actually give them an extra protection against this virus, which we don't know how it's affecting the nervous system, the heart, the lungs, and the kidneys of people who get COVID-19. So higher levels of antibody are associated with higher levels of vaccine efficacy. So the act is more effective. We're finding now that there are different types of cells. We have 5 main white blood cell types, and it's a basophil, eosinophil, and neutrophil. Those are granulocytes. Agranulocytes are lymphocytes, and monocytes are macrophage lines. The lymphocytes are B cells and T cells. The B cells produce antibodies. The T cells, there's 6 different groups: cytotoxic, amplifier, suppressor, helper, mixed lymphocyte, delayed hypersensitivity. Try to say that 10 times fast. But these antibodies are from the B cells, and the T cells are also activated, which is really encouraging. What they're finding is that we have memory cells in both parts of that immune mechanism system. So it looks like this vaccine is going to be able to last for a longer period of time than they initially thought. So science progresses based on data, not on speculation. So, you know, in God we trust, all others bring data. So as we're looking at this, the vaccine efficacy after a third dose is greatly increased. What they're finding is that, you know, the higher antibody levels are maybe required to protect against the Delta virus itself, but also a booster increases the titers of these antibodies at least tenfold. Actually, what the studies are showing now is not just tenfold, they think it's closer to 20 to 30 to 40-fold increase in your level of protection of antibodies. So the data right now supports an increased level of protection by getting a booster dose for the COVID-19 mRNA immunization. I intend to get one myself. I got both the Moderna back in February when it was available to me. And so I felt a sigh of relief. I felt like, wow, I protected myself. So what are some of the things we have to worry about down the road? One is the multidisciplinary approach to care. We're going to have to change the whole medical model system if this thing is actually causing more disease in people who already have underlying chronic medical conditions. And patient care pathways may have to change as well. Will this be increasing medical care costs? Will this increase your amount of money you have to pay for a deductible through an insurance company because someone else decided not to get vaccinated? So this is something that people have to consider and think about. Again, healthy nutrition. I have to say this. Inverted health pyramids because they had the wrong things in the bottom. It should be plant-based nutrition, exercise, adequate sleep, stress reduction, and medical care access. You need to make sure you take care of yourself. And the vaccines, there's Moderna, 2 doses, separated by 3 weeks, and then you have 4 weeks, and then you have 3 weeks for your Pfizer, and then 1 dose for your Johnson & Johnson. But what I wanted to mention is that this was not warp speed technology, and that was a terrible term for our administration to use. Never should have used that term. And the reason is that the warp speed is incorrect because every step that you normally take in a scientific study was taken with the production of this vaccine. People were trying to rush them actually, and they said no. They said phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials for each of the vaccines. And they had more scientists looking at this than ever before in history. The platform they use is around for 25 years. It wasn't totally new technology. We used it for SARS in the past. We used it for the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, MERS. We used it for Ebola when President Obama was in office. It stopped this country from being overrun by Ebola. They used the vaccine, when they were trying to contain it, and the CDC was trying to stop us from being overrun by this. So the technology, the only thing that was warp speed was that they gave them the money they needed. They got rid of all that bureaucratic entanglement from, holding their hands and pulling them back to decide whether we should, donate the money for this. It was an emergency. It was a global emergency. There are people overseas that would give everything they own to get vaccinated right now after seeing their family members die. I lost my father-in-law. I lost friends. I lost people I knew. And my wife has lost about 12 people who were classmates the year before, her year, and the year after her in Kenwood High School. So this is a real thing. It is not a hoax like some people are saying out there. And also, if you're worried about being tracked, the tracking device, no such thing. The tracking device, if you want to get rid of the tracking device, get rid of your cell phone. Start with that, because they already know where you are. The cameras all over the place, watching you. So don't even use that as a reason. So the government has better things to do than to try to track you with a tracking device and some kind of immunization. So we are at that point where I'm just going to open it up to questions, and I just want everyone to really take heed to what is being said to you about getting vaccinated. It can protect you, your entire family, your friends, your co-workers, and your entire community. And without taking that step, you're taking a very, very dangerous step off the edge of a cliff, as I started. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wow, that was such great information, and now we have plenty of tools, because you are the leaders. You are the leaders in your homes, in your community, in your churches, in your sororities, and I could just go on and on. You can now address, he hit every conspiracy theory I've heard. So now we have, again, good data. Any questions here in the room? And then Diane, I'm going to ask you, are there any in the chat box? We've got several.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Oh, great. Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you. My question was that I didn't know that, well, I found out about the Delta on the news, but not the Alpha, the Beta, and the Gamma. So, as far as, you were saying one was from UK and Germany, so which of the types of Alpha, Beta, and Delta come from those locations and the variants that they have?
Okay, yes. Well, the Alpha variant comes from the UK, so United Kingdom. There's a South African variant as well that we have that comes in, and we also have a Brazilian variant that comes from there. But we also have two California variants that actually spread to 47 other countries from the United States outwards. So this is a dynamic situation. So as we're talking about where the variants come from, it's not so much where they come from, it's where that they're here. That we are dealing with it as a threat. Now, if you are fully vaccinated, what they have been showing is that the likelihood for you to be hospitalized or end up on a ventilator is extremely reduced. There's going to be a very small chance that you're going to be one of the people that's on a ventilator. There have been so far, as I mentioned before, over 365 million doses of vaccine given out in this country. And so we have about, on a national scale, we have somewhere around the 62% mark for vaccinations. Actually, Illinois is a little bit above the national average right now. But we do have areas where we are very, very concerned about. I was showing the emergency response areas, regions 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And 3, 4, 5, and 6 are, if you can look at Illinois, look at the western border of Illinois, go down to the very southern tip and come up to the eastern border of Illinois. That's regions 3, 4, 5, and 6. So a lot of the counties are, less than 32% are vaccinated. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing a resurgence in hospitalizations. Now, we do have quite a bit of capacity in the cities for intensive care unit stays and for ventilators, but we don't have as much in the southern counties. And, the critical access hospitals and hospitals that don't have the same kind of resources. So it's important to realize that it's also a threat and whether you have enough resources. Now, Texas, they are overrun in their hospitals right now in the intensive care units. And as a result, they said if a child gets into an accident and is taken into hospital, they may not have an ICU bed for them. So they have a car accident, if they fall down a staircase, if something happens to them, these ICU beds may not be available because they're filled with people who are trying to survive from COVID-19. And that's a lot for a lot of the southern states. So we are better off than that here, but that is only because people are being vaccinated. And we have got to keep that trend going. And the Delta variant, as I said, it's much more aggressive than the variant we had from the UK variant.
Thank you, sir. We have a question here.
Dr. Arnold, for the last 18 months, we have lived in such a time of pessimism. Early on, we thought that we had a pretty good grip on this with the vaccinations, and then along comes a Delta and throws us for such a tremendous loop. And so my question is, what do we see as the future? Is this something that we can expect that every year we'll get these different variants, they will become more aggressive? Or can you give us some glimmer of hope, other than getting the vaccines? Will this be a lifetime of masking, hand washing, social distancing? And so just where do you see this going?
Okay, very good question. And I showed, when I started off, I showed you that image of the reflection pool in Washington, D.C. And when I was looking at it, I was like, we had 502,000 deaths in February. By August 19th, we had 624,318 people who passed. And what kept hitting me, I said, what would have happened if instead of December 2020, we had a vaccine in December of 2019. We would have had saved 624,318 lives. That many families would not have been impacted, that many businesses, that many community centers, that these people were ministers, they were people who were working, hard-working people, labor force, they were teachers, and they were healthcare workers, they were librarians, they were lawyers, they were everyone. It did not have a predilection for one type of person over another. It did not discriminate. So getting vaccinated is the key. If we can get everyone vaccinated, we will protect ourselves and have a much better future. If we choose not to get vaccinated, then, as I was mentioning before, with the evolution of these different variants, the Delta variant, the Lambda variant, the Alpha, the Beta, all these variants are still circulating. And the only way to put it's sort of like looking at a forest fire in California, what we have seen right now. One of the problems with the forest fire is that it creates embers, and these embers fly out from the fire and go quite a distance, a few miles away, and start another fire. That's what this virus is doing. It's starting fires by jumping from one community to another, to another, to another. And unless we put the fire out, these embers can still keep coming up. So the destiny of time is in our hands. We say that, destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. So the choices we make here are very critical. And if we try to vaccinate everyone, get everyone vaccinated, we have a much better future. Let's start with that. The natural course of most pandemics is that they will burn out, over time. But the question is, what do they leave in their wake? And if you have underlying chronic medical conditions, if you have, even if you're healthy, as I was mentioning before about that one triathlete, her life has changed forever now. And no telling what kind of medical cure she'll have as time goes on. So I would say the bright side of it is that we have something that can prevent this from killing you and putting you in the hospital. Take advantage of it. As I was mentioning before about the Tuskegee study, they did not have they were not offered penicillin. And as a result, they suffered the consequences of stage 4 syphilis, quaternary syphilis, where they died from it, went blind. So we cannot put ourselves in that same position as people in the Tuskegee study and not take advantage of something that we already are showing the data that most of the people who are being hospitalized right now, 99.99%, are people who are unvaccinated. What does that tell you? it tells you that some things protecting those people are vaccinated, and that's the vaccine. So, I think that we will determine our future by our actions.
Dr. Arnold, we are unfortunately running out of time. We've probably got a couple of more questions in the room. Is there a way that people can email you and ask questions, or?
Oh, sure.
If you put it in the chat box there, and you guys can follow up with your questions there. I could just listen to you all day. Yes. You guys, we've got 3 door prizes I want to give away very quickly. So pull out your red tickets. I also want to point out, we do try to raise a little money as seed money for next year's conference. We have a silent art auction in this corner. You can just bid on it. We don't want to take any of it home, so make us offers. You can work with that. Be sure and visit any of the vendors that may still be here. Lunch is served. You have barbecue from the brand new Smokehouse Barbecue. We're launching that business today. And also Jennifer Lang, who probably you've seen her food truck around. They're outside. So you have a couple of great options for lunch, and we will resume again at 1 o'clock. Don't forget to get your blood pressure checked and consult with our pharmacist, Kim France, and Rebecca Bogan, who is a physician's assistant, is here for that support as well. All right, get your tickets out. First, number 272. And if you've won one, we do ask that you only, claim one prize this year. I ain't gonna mention no names because somebody took about 10 of them last time. I ain't gonna mention no names saying you pull it. 272. The winner, thank you, Miss Terry. Go back, Christy will give you your door prize. Who's got 254? 254. Going once, twice.
That might be enough.
254.
I got 230.
All right, how about 273? 273. Okay, I'll hold on to them, maybe they're in the other room, and we will be pulling more throughout the day. Don't forget to get your photos over there in that beautiful booth. Terrence, what happened?
And if you could mention about the Lions, of course, the Lions.
Go ahead and mention it.
The Lions, for those that don't know, our model is we serve. Of course, I'm sure we all have heard of the crisis in Haiti and all over the world. And so what we're trying to do is be assistance and do what we can to provide help. We're raffling off beautiful, beautiful purses. If you like Dooney and Burke, beautiful purses. If you have a lot, they make wonderful gifts. Help us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, let's start back at 1 o'clock promptly for the afternoon session. We'll start with the awards ceremony at 1. Terrence, you had a comment.
Yeah, don't forget your survey.
There is an evaluation, thank you. If you are leaving early, please leave your evaluation. Hopefully you're staying with us all day, but if you do have to leave early, please leave the evaluation. That helps us make it better for next year. Mark your calendar for August the 20th, the 3rd Saturday, same time, same place. If you have thoughts for themes and colors, let us know that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
If we go, I'm not gonna spend my money. But if we don't go, I go spend my money together. $100. Yeah. I got it. It's $100. She said they originally was $149, but she got them on sale today. But then I'm like, do I want to spend $100? I don't know what they want, but they really pretty though. So I'm like, I go into the over. I didn't know what the price was. Come on, some shit. Take that. But if we go into the winery, I'll hold out.
Right, so you don't have to money for that, right?
For the friend? Mom, you not gonna treat me as a friend?
Oh, good Lord. Well, let me see. Take me one and I'll take a half.
So I can get half money and I'll do. Okay. So I can spend my money at the